It's Tim Huggins back again. This is, I guess, episode 2 or whatever you want to do. I'm not going to mark all these. So, where we left off was me having a traumatic incident and leaving the Mormon church. I'm sorry about the light. It's just that weird time of day here in Seattle. But where I kind of want to talk about is what happened next, and then what eventually led me to be an atheist. I'm sure every Mormon has a different experience, and a lot of times they'll become non-denominational Christians or Catholics, or hell, I dabbled with Buddhism for a while. I thought, man, it's like if Mormonism's wrong, it's probably Buddhism. But I guess lost all my religious belief altogether, and I'll explain why. So I'm here in Wallingford, which is a neighborhood here in Seattle. Kind of a busy spot, nice spot. I'll probably find somewhere quiet I could talk about what happened exactly. So like I said on the last video, I left the church. I left the church in my head. I wasn't publicly out. Basically, when I left, I didn't exactly tell my parents right away. I did stop wearing my holy garments, which are those funny underwear everybody always talks about. And basically my parents didn't really suspect anything until they realized I wasn't going to singles ward, which is where non-married men and women go either to hook up with people or get ready to go on a mission. It came down to one day that I left my holy garments on the ground, that one day I left my gardens in the drawer, and I wasn't wearing them, and I think my mom realized I wasn't wearing my temple garments, and I hadn't in a while, and she confronted me. That was the first time she confronted me. She kind of knew what was going on. She could see the writing on the wall, but I kept kind of lying. I basically said no. It's kind of itchy sometimes. That's basically the excuse I gave her. And a few more times, it just came down to a big fight that I had with her about not getting my shots to go to Brazil. She says, you need to get this done or you're never gonna go. And I was kind of stupid and said, you know, what if I don't go? Would it be that big a deal? Kind of became one of the first times that I've ever heard my mother swear. And she says, you know what, you're just being a shithead. Which at the time was kind of terrifying to hear her say that, but it was also somewhat of a humanizing moment. And I said, oh, I'm sorry, you know. I went in and I decided that I'll get my shots. I'll kind of keep up the appearances, but I eventually need to tell them. So about a week after I got my shots to go to Brazil, I basically said, hey, Mom and Dad, I need to tell you something. I'm not going to go on a mission because I don't think I'm a Mormon anymore. And the reaction was disbelief. My father broke down. It's probably one of the first times I've ever seen him cry. And my mom reacted very violently, maybe because of the other incidents that we've had. Here, kitty. There's a kitty here. And she just kind of told me, well, if you don't want to be a member, you can get the hell out of my house. Fair enough. I was 19 years old. I was kind of living off my parents anyways. But I think the assumption was that eventually I would move on, but saying that you're saying you're no longer a part of the church means you're kind of voiding that contract that you had. And basically I just got out and just started walking. I didn't know where the hell I was going. I know it sounds odd, but I kind of hope that they would accept that, that they would say, hey, he's not a Mormon, but it'll be okay. But over time, the older I get, I might have reacted in a similar way. So I just started walking, and then eventually my dad came and picked me up and said, hey, no matter what you believe, we still love you. Which was odd to hear, because I always had a very interesting relationship with my father. That wasn't bad, but it wasn't full of him telling me I love you and all these kind of things. But I noticed that it definitely sparked a divide. And after that, I officially left the church without actually writing the letter, which I'll kind of describe later. I'll put it in the description what that involves. But how I got to atheism is a very interesting story in and of itself. One of my Mormon friends actually encouraged me to start researching other religions, which I thought was nice, comforting. One of the religions that I started researching was Catholicism, which my whole life was kind of painted as, the great Satan. So it felt kind of weird to even research them. It was just no, I'll admit I didn't do a scholar's research on Catholicism, but it just didn't seem right to me. It just seemed like it had some of the same problems, but it was definitely more logically consistent, but it was still had some issues. Especially with hierarchies. I was very anti-hierarchy at the time, so something based on the Pope didn't really make much sense to me. So the next religion was non-denominational Christian, which I had some major issues with the Bible. I still do. Many of those being a newer Christian interpretation of accepted scholarly interpretations of certain passages. So people started to accept that, you know, the world is 7,000 years old, there is no evolution. It's like, I actually believe in evolution, I actually believe in all that kind of stuff. And I did as a Mormon as well. So there was a few issues, and the other thing was I started to just start thinking back to every spiritual experience that I've ever had. And I couldn't put a spiritual I couldn't put a supernatural component on it. None. I could always explain it as some natural phenomenon. That was a big problem. That meant maybe there was no God, or maybe there was nothing spiritual. And if nothing was supernatural, or there wasn't any God, then that meant that I had to stop looking at religion for some of my existential problems. I had to start thinking that there is a possibility that if I die, I go nowhere. That's a scary thought for a 19-year-old. That's a scary thought for anyone, I think. And it was something I wasn't comfortable with. And I'll admit, I didn't do nearly the research that I have as an adult. And if I met 19-year-old Tim, he would probably be what they would categorize as a angry, ignorant atheist, because I really didn't know any better. I feel like I know a lot more now than I did then, but I'm still I still admit that there are things that I do not know, and I'm open to learning. But the one thing that I'm pretty sure about is there isn't a God, and coming to that conclusion was hard. And I talked to one of my friends who is agnostic, and I said, how do you deal with the idea that when you die, there is nothing? And he just basically said, it's the same feeling that you have when you fall asleep. It's just black. Everything just goes to black. And I think it made a lot of sense, because my assumption always is that it would hurt, or that there was some kind of, or the ultimate suffering. But he actually explained it in somewhat of as a relief. And once I accepted that, I really haven't gone back to a theist mindset. And believe me, I am not saying when I was 19 that I had great ideas. In fact, I had a lot of really bad ideas. I am what a lot of people would categorize as a liberal. But when I was younger, I always considered myself as a Marxist. I read Das Kapital. I read some of the other works of Marx and Engels. I never read any neo-Marxist literature, but I do own several books to this day of Marx, and I really loved his theories when I was younger, and I guess most young people would. But I'm gonna go into some of those ideas that I really liked, and why I would not consider myself a Marxist now. But for now, everybody have a great day, and Goodbye from Seattle.